Okay, we're going to be working on a gumball machine. We've looked at different gumball machines through the Illustrator. So you can see my example. I did this with oil pastels. So I'm going to give you an option. You can use oil pastels or colored pencils. Now I will warn you, even though oil pastels don't look as messy, it can get messy. And then it's a little bit different when, well, it's similar but different when we shade it. They're just a little bit thicker. So they may cover your lines. I can't really go over that with the black again. So that's what our finished piece looks like. What you will have is a 9x12 white piece of paper. There is a drawing guide you can print out. There's a template you can print out. And if they're not ready to draw it, there's something they could trace or just decorate it on here and add the gumballs. That's the coloring sheet. So those 3 papers are provided. You will need to print the gumball machine template. I've already printed it on cardstock and I've cut it out. This is the shape we're all going to trace for the actual machine. And then there's a bunch of gumballs. Now, the reason I gave you multiple ones is because if you lose it or if it, like this one started to get really messy, so I'm going to have to go ahead and cut out another one. Now, be aware, it's very important that when you're cutting out a template, you have to use that black line. If you're not following the black line, the shape you're cutting is not going to be the shape you want. We want this to be a very good circle, so make sure that you're cutting out the template correctly. So I've already got that cut out and ready. Move that to the side. And we're going to start with our name. So please don't forget whatever tool that you have that matches your table. That is what you're going to use to write your name. Now, do not, you can write your name after you've drawn it, just in case you want to switch over. If you are using a pencil, sometimes that gives us 2 sides before we commit to our name. Just make sure you don't forget to write your name at some point. Then we're going to flip it over. And you're going to fold it. So take the short bottom, fold it to the short top. This is going to help guide us where to put our first template. Open it up. So the first template is you're going to write the bottom of that circle is at the touching that line. That's exactly where it needs to be, not too far left or right. I'm using a black colored pencil to outline it so you can see it. If you are using a pencil and eraser, just make sure that you are drawing lightly. That way when you erase, the marks come off easier. So again, when we use a template, you have to use your other hand that's not drawing with, hold that down, get your elbow up so it's not in the way, and then make sure that you're actually drawing on the paper. And you can see I kind of have to switch and move around. So make sure you're following that. So when I move it, it should look as best as possible close to this. Move that template, or if you're sharing it, move it on the side. Then you have your guide that you can follow along with that's just going to walk you through. So the next part is adding, it's like a little hat. And then we're going to work on the part that this ball sits on. So you're going to start on the circle. And it's a slight diagonal. I'm going to make sure these are exactly where they need to be. I want them to be as symmetrical as possible. And then the bottom's like a curve. So it's going to start at this little thing, kind of bump out, curve, and then another bump. And then there's a metal piece it sits on. So I'm going to start on that edge right here, go straight down, curve, straight up. Now the part that is where you put your quarter in, you turn it, and the gumball comes out. That's what we're working on next. So first it's a long rectangle and it's right underneath that circle. It's very skinny. Then we're going to have a square coming off it. So I'm going to move in a little bit. Then the little thing that you turn, it's a very odd shape. It's kind of diagonal, straight, diagonal, straight, diagonal, straight. It just depends on which way, vertical, horizontal. So I'm going to try my best to do this right around the middle. So it's diagonal, straight, diagonal. Then you're going to put straight on both ends. Then we're going to repeat that. Going down, diagonal, straight, and look, see, mine was not very curved. Mine was more curved. Then coming off this little corner up here, I'm going to go up, up. Coming off this corner, I'm going to curve down. So again, that's where your quarter goes in. You turn this little knob. And then the part where the gumball pops out is right below that. So it's a 2 parallel horizontal lines. And then we're going to connect them with a slight curve. Slight. And then we got one more where this bump comes in. We're going to it kind of has an indentation. So I'm not going to connect it. I'm just going to draw a line knowing that's a curve. And then there is the last part. There's a metal piece right underneath here that is touching this. So these corners right here, I'm going to start here, curve that way, corner, curve that way. Okay, last but not least is adding those gumballs. So again, it's very important that you trace this correctly. Now it looks like you're gonna have to trace it a lot, Miss Lawson. Well, once you get a few traced, then you're gonna start overlapping. So you can see there's a few of them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe, 6 or 7 that you see the full circle. And then you see, oh, there's a curve, but it stops because it's gonna start hitting other circles. And you want them to look like the full circles are in front. The half circles are behind it. So you're going to get to a point where you're only tracing parts of the gumball. Now, I used a permanent marker on this one, and that's where the little circle got a little dirty because the permanent marker was just bleeding everywhere. That's why I chose to switch to a colored pencil because it wasn't going to make such a mess. So I'm just going to start in the middle. Again, you have to hold it down and trace. I'm going to trace about 7 full ones, and then I'll show you what I mean overlapping. Careful when you start, don't start all the way up here, because if you put your first gumball all the way up here, that means you've got to fill gumballs all the way below it. The lower you start, then you can kind of decide how high and how many you want to go inside the machine. Now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 full circles. So the other ones are not going to always be a full circle. So you can see if I put my template here, I'm going to start by touching this gumball and then stop it as I hit that gumball. Then I'm going to move my finger so I can get my finger away. And the same thing on the bottom. Start, stop. So it looks like these 2 gumballs are in front and that one is behind. So we don't want to leave this space. We want to do the same thing. As I move my gumball, again, I don't want to trace over. I just want to hit certain spots of the gumball. So you can see there's one behind it. So as I move, I kind of touch the gumball that's there, hit other gumballs. I don't want to trace completely, make sure the gumball's in there, around, because these other ones are behind it. And sometimes I just have to finish the line where I think it's going to be. So I start on that gumball, stop on that one. See, that one's behind it. So you have to be careful because, again, if you start really high, and so you can see there's a space, so I know one's going to stop. So you just kind of move your template around, figuring out where you want the other gumballs. And then when you feel like there's enough, then stop. Be careful. That one would look funny if I left it there. I cannot have one just floating in the air. It has to be touching another gumball. Okay, so I don't know if you can tell. Do you see the one area that doesn't make sense? Well, there's 2 probably. Right here. And right here. Now this spot, I could just add a color right there and it would look like there's a gumball behind it. This space is a little big, so I want to make sure I lay the paper down and trace something. And it literally was 2 tiny lines, so you can see. So you have to look at it and look to see, does that spot, like that one makes sense. That's okay, I can color it. That spot was just too big. So again, this is all trash, those templates. We don't have to keep those. Now we're just going to be adding one color on the background. I know the illustration we looked at was sitting on the table. If you want to draw a line here and a line here, and then you're going to add one color on the bottom and one color on the top, that's fine. I'm going to just do one color all around. Again, this is going to take us a while because colored pencils move a little bit slower. Oil pastels are going to move slow too because you just trying not to get too messy. So I'm going to move off to the side. And then if you have time for this one, we're going to be adding color. If not, we're going to put this away in our folders. Again, if you have not, flip it over. Make sure that you write your name before you move on to the next step. We have to make sure our name's in the back so we can get this paper back to the correct person. Okay, now that we are going to be adding color, I have a variety of colored pencils. So one you will need is a gray. Actually, this is actually a silver. So I actually have a silver, but if not, you're going to use a gray color. The top of our gumball machine, this could be either the color of your gumball machine, which is going to be down here, or this can be silver like the other parts of gumball machine. I've seen it two different ways. In my example, I did the same color here as I did here, and then I did gray. So I think I'm going to do the same thing because there's a lot of gray anyway. So I'm going to keep that the same color as whatever color. You do not have to use red. You do not have to use purple. You are going to pick the colors you want. Now, I forgot to mention for shading purposes, I do want to pick a shade that has a lighter and a darker shade. For example, this pink, let me show you on a scratch piece of paper. I got to have two shades. So this I can use for the lighter and darker shade. For example, red, you could use a orange red and then a darker red. There's lots of options for blues. I don't know if that one's going to be too dark, if this is purple. Maybe too dark. So make sure that whatever color you, oh, that's purple. Whatever color you choose, let's try this, that it has a lighter and a darker shade. So when we get to the shading part, you can use the darker colored pencil oil pastel to add this shading or value onto this piece. So you're going to use the lighter color first. This is going to be the base color of your gumball machine, and keep the little sharpener close for those using colored pencils because you're going to need it. Okay, I technically should have done lighter in the top, but we're going to deal with that later. So, okay, that's a pretty good coloring technique. I want to color in as much white space. I don't want to leave it. Okay, so then I'm going to move, before I move to my darker, I'm going to move to my silver. Again, all this, the rest of it is going to be silver. This we're not touching yet. Okay, so I've used my silver. Now, if you don't have a silver, the other option is using a pencil. Okay, so here's my silver. That's what I just used. Here's my pencil, and I'm just doing it very lightly. Or a black colored pencil lightly. So if you don't have a silver like I'm lucky to have, I don't know why I have that, but there's three different options that you can, or two different options you can use. I do have a gray colored pencil, which works just as good. It's just a different shade. So don't say you can't do this if you don't have a gray or a silver. Again, the pencil or black lightly, again, these have to be lighter, work just as fine. So just may be different, but you can still do it. Okay. Now for the gumballs, I have a bunch of different colors sitting out. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pick one color, color 3 or 4 of them that color, and then move to the next color. I really don't want to do a pattern or anything because I just want to randomly color them. And I don't want to always do, like if I always do a red, put an orange next to it. So I'm just going to use the different colors and fill it in. Filled in. Now you can see there's a few spots that I need to just pick a color, and I don't have to have an actual ball drawn there, but you know, if there's a color behind it, then there's probably a gumball behind it. That one probably is a little big, but who cares? And you can do it with the same color. You can do it with different ones. Okay, so I filled in all my gumball colors. If there's a few white spots around, that's fine. Now I want to go to the shading part. So again, I have my pink that I used here. I'm going to use my darker pink. Now we're going to pretend that there's a light shining from, for me, I'm going to do the right. So that means on the left, I'm going to shade it in, not the whole, like obviously just the pink. So I'm going to take this darker pink and just go over this lighter pink. And as I come to this middle right here, that's when I'm going to kind of fade into that pink. I can just lighten it up. So as I'm coming this way, I'm just not pushing as hard with this pink. Okay, so what we're going to do now for the background is you get to pick a color. You can do, if you drew the line where that's sitting on a table, you would do one color on the bottom, one color on the top, or you can just do one color like I'm going to do. So that's what I find easier. I think it looked good. Now, what I did do with the oil pastels is I did one color and then I took that darker color and also did it on the dark side. You can see that I even did that with oil pastels with two reds. I used a more orange red and then a darker red. So my darker color is on that side where the brighter color's there. So the same thing with the background, you can use a lighter shade and then a darker shade on that left side. For me, it was left because that's where my shadow is. But that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to work on the background, adding the base color, which is the lighter one. Okay, yes, I took a lot of time on the background. I really wanted to cover up as much white paper as possible. I like to take the colored pencils or whatever and kind of get good like just quick coverage all over the paper and then go back and work over that because it just lets me feel like I'm not taking forever. I mean, if I miss a spot, it still has a lot of color on there. I just want to leave less white paper. Now, you can see that my darker color, again, it's only on the left side. I took that darker color, I started on this corner and kind of made a diagonal line going that way. So it kind of looks like that line when the sun is shining on it. I didn't color the whole bottom. So I suggest you do that, start on that corner and then just kind of make a diagonal line going towards this side of the paper. I really could do a better job of this. This is okay on my background. It is a lot of paper and probably not the best paper for colored pencil, but you can see it leaves some etching lines on there, but it's good coverage. So I just want to work and get that good coverage much as possible. As for the white part, the actual glass part, we're not going to do anything with that. I did try to use a white oil pastel on my oil pastels and then it just smudged. I don't feel like it gave it much of a good look. So again, you have the choice. You can use your oil pastels and fill in your color. The same techniques, it's just with a different type of medium, or you can use your colored pencils. Really, if I put them side by side, let me clean my mess up here. For the colored pencil, I originally was going to do this in chalk, but then I realized I just didn't have all the colors with me. I didn't have very many. So oil pastels, I had more options, but I don't like the texture it gave compared to the colored pencil. I feel like the colored pencil is a little more realistic than the actual oil pastel. But again, you have your choice. But I'm just gonna say I would even go back through and some of these gumballs and fill in better and more darken name on the back. And if you're testing colors, this is a good place to test colors. If you're trying to figure out which colors to use for either oil pastels or colored pencils, always like do it on the back. Now, if you use the sharpener, do make sure that you clean up your sharpener mess. If it didn't have a container that it collects the sharpener pieces with, we don't want to leave those sitting around or push them on the table. Get them and throw those away, please. And then make sure that your colored pencils are up. If you have any template left, again, that's trash. And that is the end of our gumball illustration.